Hi everyone, welcome to week 3. This week we're going to be covering 2 chapters. The first chapter we're looking at is chapter 4. Chapter 4 is all about the skeletal system. So we're going to be looking at the structure and the function of the skeletal system. Now, there's a ton of information in this particular chapter, all about the bones and the different functions of the bones, and especially getting into the naming of the different bones. So, literally every bone in the body is discussed in this chapter. This is just a picture of the skeletal system. Some of those major bones of the skeleton that you'll be looking at. Starting with the skull and going all the way down to the feet. You're going to be looking at everything here. But what I really want you to focus on, as in some of the previous things we've discussed, is I want you to focus on not just learning all the bones of the body. That is not what you're going to be needing to do. Becoming comfortable with the names, recognizing names when you see them in a prescription or in a doctor's order in a hospital setting. That's what's key in this particular chapter. So recognizing the names of the bones is more important than being able to identify which particular vertebrae we're looking at and things like that. So keep that in mind as you're going through this chapter. What I really want you to focus on is some of the different conditions related to the skeletal system. So things like arthritis, fractures, herniated discs, osteoporosis, those types of things. Becoming familiar with the abbreviations that are referenced in this chapter. So looking at the C1 through C7, that's, meaning the different vertebrae of the cervical vertebrae, things like that. FX being fracture. Those are the important things for you to become familiar with. The other thing is becoming familiar with the medications used to treat some of these things. Obviously, big things is going to be pain relief. So acetaminophen, aspirin, ibuprofen are all pain relievers. Ibuprofen is a pain reliever that does so by reducing inflammation. So is naproxen. Prednisone reduces inflammation as well, but it uses a steroid. That's kind of the difference between those there. And then you have your categories of drugs. So things like analgesics, anti-inflammatories, things like that. So again, that's the focus of this particular chapter, chapter 4. Chapter 5 then gets into the muscular and joints, the muscular system and the joints. So the connectives, the things that connect the skeleton to different other to other parts. Excuse me. You're going to look at the different types of muscles, the skeletal muscles, which are all those connections that we talked about. Smooth muscles are those muscles that make things work, like within your digestive system, things like that. Cardiac muscles, the heart. So those are the function of this particular chapter, learning all about the different types of muscles and how they work and where they're located. But again, we don't need to get into the detail. You don't necessarily need to know, where's your bicep, where's your deltoid, that type of thing. Obviously, being familiar with them, recognizing them is going to be key, but it is not necessary for you to be able to necessarily identify them on the body. What it is important for you to do is to, again, learn some of those pathological conditions and some of those drugs associated with them. So, looking at things like arthritis, of course, that's a very common one when we're dealing with the muscles and the joints. Muscular dystrophy is an example of an actual disease state. So we're not always talking about injuries. We're talking about all of those different things. Let's see. Myalgia, just general muscle pain. Rheumatoid arthritis, sprains. Those are all things that are going to be covered in this particular chapter. Strains, tendinitis. So as you're looking at those and learning how they refer to the different muscles and the joints, Also, keep in mind that you're going to be looking at those medications used to treat some of those different disorders. And, again, you're going to see some of the same things. You're going to see acetaminophen, aspirin, those pain relievers, ibuprofen. But then you're going to see some other things. Diazepam is used for muscle tension. And then again, categories. So you're going to see it looked at the name of the drugs. You're going to see categories of drugs, all of those things in these 2 chapters. So again, focus on not learning necessarily every single bone and muscle of the body, but, general things. How do I recognize a bone? How do I recognize a muscle? What am I going to be doing to treat those conditions related to the bones and muscles? If at any time over the next 2 weeks, the next week, as you go through these 2 chapters, you have questions, make sure you email, call, or text. My number is 618-792-2293. Have a great week.